it's really tough to be a Padres fan because I feel like something like this happens, and he's had a bad first half, and, he's clearly gifted. I get frustrated that we have to worry about the anxiety of the ownership. Like, they make this long commitment for Will Myers, and it doesn't work out. Is that going to scare them in the future for putting serious money behind the player? I think that we have to worry about that as Padres fans, and I don't think that's necessarily fair.
Welcome to the Reindl Report.
Hey, here's a hot take for you. Steph Curry, most overrated basketball player I've ever seen.
A podcast out of San Diego, California that rewrites the definition of mediocrity.
Yeah, and I don't trust anyone that calls a hot dog a sandwich. Are you crazy?
Are you stupid or something?
And I'll tell you another thing. You know what? I think pineapples do belong on pizza.
Almost as stupid as a stupid does.
I think watching pitchers try to hit in baseball is one of the worst things in all of sports.
Oh my God, Paul, you make me so mad sometimes.
And I don't want to hear any of this 6-0 in the finals. LeBron James will retire as the GOAT.
Shut the up! Now, here's your host, Paul Reindl.
What's happening, San Diego? Paul Reindl here. Another edition of the Reindl Report, episode 47. This is a sports podcast based out of San Diego, California. I am Paul Reindl, the host of the Reindl Report, and I'm really looking forward to this episode. This is going to be a good podcast here. I'm looking forward to it. We're going to talk a lot of baseball. Going to be nice to get back into the swing of things, pun intended. Been a little while since we talked baseball. We had the All-Star break and kind of took a break from sports in general with, episode 45, I believe, when we had stand-up comedian Billy Gleason on the podcast. That was great. Highly recommend you check that out. It's still relevant, still fresh, and it'll make you laugh for about an hour. We sat down with Billy. All-Star break, nothing really going on in the NFL. We had the NBA Summer League. We had a lot of Conor McGregor, Floyd Mayweather conversation to have last week, and that kind of died off this week. We'll get back into that as we approach the mega fight, the super fight, whatever you want to call it, coming up on August 26th. But I'm looking forward to getting back into sports here. Going to talk a lot of baseball. Got some special guests coming up. In just a few minutes, we're going to talk with the guys from the Kept Faith podcast, one of several Padres podcasts out here in San Diego. These guys know what they're talking about. They're very entertaining. They're very informative. Nick McCann and Dallas McLaughlin from the Kept Faith going to join me on the podcast here in a matter of minutes. Got a few other things I want to get to. Towards the end of the podcast here, I'm gonna tell you why you're doing social media wrong, and I'm gonna tell you as well who you can follow to learn how to do social media right. So that's coming up, and something that I've been doing. You can follow me on Twitter at Paul Reindl SD. I usually will tweet out, hey, podcast coming tomorrow. Hey, podcast in a couple of days. What do you want to hear? This is what we're going to be talking about. What else do you want to hear? And so I try to honor that whenever I can, and got to give a shout out to my girl Allison. She said she wants to hear hashtag Daphne the dog talk. So I guess I got a story for you. Daphne the dog, that is my dog, little 2-year-old Labradorgie, I think is what her official breed is, or a Corgador. Half Corgi, half Lab. Very bizarre mix, actually, and I don't really want to know how that all came about. But I do have a story that I'll save for the end of the podcast about Daphne the dog. Hashtag Daphne the dog. But I want to start in the NFL. We still have a few weeks left before training camp, a few weeks before spring preseason football. Spring training, I guess, in football terms, but preseason football around the corner. Hall of Fame induction coming up next month in August. LaDainian Tomlinson going to be enshrined in Canton. It's kind of a weird... It's gonna be a weird couple months here getting into football season. It doesn't feel the same as it has in the past for those of us, those sports fans here in San Diego. I don't really know how I'm going to handle the NFL season. I'll tell you right now, everybody's asking, who are you going to root for now? What team? Who's your new team? Well, it's simple. It's actually a very easy answer. My team, the team that I'm going to be paying attention to, the team that I'm going to be following each and every week is my fantasy football team. The 12 guys I have on team Rinse Lather 3-peat. That's going to be, I'm going to be watching a lot of Red Zone. But as far as the Chargers are concerned, I'm probably going to watch them. I don't know if I'm going to even call it hate watching yet. I hope they don't win a lot. I certainly don't hope that they make the playoffs, but man, when it comes down to that Monday night game, first game of the year in Denver, yeah, I'm probably going to be watching it. And I'm probably, there's going to be a part of me that's happy if and when Rivers hits Gates for the record-setting touchdown that night. So definitely got some NFL thoughts, but we got plenty of time to get into season predictions and training camp storylines and everything like that. I want to talk about something that I saw this week on Fox Sports 1. Michael Vick back in the news. And because of Michael Vick now, Colin Kaepernick back in the news. No, Colin Kaepernick still does not have a team. He is still unemployed while guys like, Mike Glennon and company are signing, $40+ million contracts. Colin Kaepernick's still employed, but Michael Vick, he was on Fox Sports 1 and he was talking with the guys, Shannon Sharp. I think Jason Whitlock was there as well. Could go on and on about my thoughts on Jason Whitlock, but that's for another podcast. This is about Michael Vick. I'm actually going to play some audio. Okay. This is what Michael Vick said on Fox Sports 1, and he was talking about Colin Kaepernick and his image and why he's not employed, and take a listen.
The first thing we got to get Colin to do is cut his hair. Listen, I'm not up here to try to be politically correct, but, even if he puts cornrows in it, I don't think he should represent himself, in that way in terms of, just the hairstyle. Just go clean cut. Why not? You're already dealing with a lot of controversy surrounding this issue.
That's a fascinating thing to hear you say, Mike.
That he needs to do is, just try to be presentable. Look, so all the social media stuff that he's doing, look, we get it, we understand it. It's time for, Colin to step up in a different way. And, I think primarily the reason why he's not signed to a team right now is because of the last 2 seasons and not being as productive as everybody,
Let me just ask you a question, because I kind of chuckled when you said he had cut his hair, because I just thought you didn't like the hairstyle, but you're actually saying that it represents something.
Yeah, I just think perception and image is everything. And listen, it's not the Colin Kaepernick that we've known, since he entered the National Football League. And I'm just going off my personal experiences, but listen, I love the guy to death, but I want him to also succeed on and off the field, and this has to be a start for him. It's not about selling out. When you're good and you're playing great, then you're going to be wanted. People are going to want to, sign you. They're going to want to see you play. They want to see everything that you have to give. In regards to him just not being signed right now, it has to do with the production over the last couple of years, and I continue to say that.
So, a couple things there. Man, that I did not like hearing that at all. I've got so many problems with what Michael Vick said there on FS1, and I'm going to play it here in a second. Shannon Sharp, he went off on Michael Vick. He went off on him, just calling him out. I'm trying not to get into my thoughts on the whole Colin Kaepernick and the protest situation, because if I've learned anything over the last year or so, it's that sports and politics just don't mix. You're not here to listen about politics. You're not here to listen to my thoughts on whether or not I think there's a problem with police brutality against African Americans. Spoiler alert, there is. Spoiler alert, Colin Kaepernick didn't do anything wrong. Spoiler alert, Colin Kaepernick doesn't need to change his appearance to be more accepted by the NFL culture. That's a Michael Vick opinion. This is coming from a guy who went to jail for running a dogfighting ring, murdering dogs, hanging dogs. This guy was a criminal. He was a felon. He did time at Leavenworth State Penitentiary in Kansas. Okay? Michael Vick committed a crime, And if he thinks that you need to change your perception is reality and you need to change your image, then that's coming from a guy that committed a crime and needed to change his image, or thought he needed to change his image if he ever wanted a second chance in the NFL. This is not a guy that peacefully protested and peacefully exercised his First Amendment right as an American to stand up for what he believed in. Okay? I'm getting pissed off right now, so I'm gonna let you listen to what Shannon Sharpe had to say, and then I'll wrap it up here before we move on to some other things.
What does Colin Kaepernick's hair have to do with anything? He need to reform his image from what? Some of the media, and even Michael Vick, has convinced himself that what Colin Kaepernick did by taking a knee was equal to, if not worse, than what Michael Vick went to prison for. Michael, you went to prison. You are a convicted felon. You needed to change your image. Colin Kaepernick took a knee. He took a knee in protest of black and brown unarmed men and women being killed at a disproportionate high rate compared to the percentage in which they represent in America. And the officers that were doing this killing, they were being held unaccountable for their actions. He took a knee. The very country that Colin Kaepernick took a knee in was founded on protest. We keep talking about he was disrespectful of the flag. We have yet to address the issue, what he was trying to bring attention to. Larry Fitzgerald, he has dreads. Does he need to change his image? Kawhi Leonard, on your favorite team, Skip, he has cornrows. Does he need to change his image? No, he does not. Stop perpetuating this stereotype, Michael Vick. My grandmother used to say, boy, sometime when people get to where they're going, they'll forget where they came from. Michael Vick, you were a convicted felon. Someone gave you a second chance. And you saying that Colin Kaepernick needs to cut his hair to change his appearance, to change the narrative around him. From what? He's never been arrested. He committed no crime. He killed no one. He abused no one. What is the image that he needs to portray? I don't get it.
I don't get it either, Shannon. And damn it, that was well said. Very well said. I applaud Shannon Sharpe for going back and telling Michael Vick what's what. I don't understand the thought process by saying something like that coming from Vick. I don't get it. And again, I'm going to steer clear. I probably already too much on this subject because I know how sensitive people are to protesting the flag and taking a knee during the national anthem. But at the end of the day, Colin Kaepernick doesn't have a job, and it's not because Colin Kaepernick has an afro. If you really believe that, then I don't know what to tell you. And you could say it's because he's not that talented, but then I would just come back with, oh, and Mike Glennon is? Josh McCown is? I can name 10 other guys that you've never even heard of, and they have a job in the National Football League. They are quarterbacks on a team somewhere. So then what's the rebuttal? Well, he's not that good, but teams don't want to take on all the baggage. There it is. Teams don't want to take on the baggage. It has nothing to do with how he dresses, how he looks. Maybe it has to do with the way he dresses his socks. I'll concede a little bit there because I thought that was not very smart of him to wear socks that had pig, police officer, whatever characters on the socks. But he needs to cut his hair and change his image. Mike Vick, man, you needed to change your image because you went to jail and you were a felon and you were a criminal who murdered innocent dogs. Okay, you didn't protest. You didn't take a knee. You didn't have some strong Twitter takes about how to change the world. You killed dogs. You needed to change your image, not Colin Kaepernick. All right, that's enough on that subject. Looking forward to getting into some baseball here. We're going to switch gears completely. Going to be joined by 50% of The Kept Faith. The Kept Faith is a really fun, interesting podcast and blog about the Padres, and we're going to talk about the Padres in particular. I feel have a really awesome online community, the Twitter sphere, the blogosphere. It's just a lot of fun. There's so many different podcasts and blogs out there, and everybody seems to get along together. So I'm really looking forward to him. We're going to talk a little bit of baseball, Padres. Like, we knew what this season was, but we're going to get into the second half of the year now, and I don't know, I'd like to pick Nick's brain and see what gets him excited for this year. Is he looking forward? Is he living in the moment? All that and more coming up next. Nick McCann joins me from the Kept Faith right here on the Reindl Report. All right, you got the careless whisper, so you know what that means. It means one of two things. It means it's either about to get a little hot and steamy, wherever you may be, or we're going to talk a little Padres baseball, a little Austin Hedges, and maybe with my next guest, it could be a combination of those two things. If you follow them on Twitter at the Kept Faith, or on their personal accounts at Nicholas_McCann, at Dallas_MC. A lot of Austin Hedges love, and who can blame him? I mean, have you looked into those eyes? Have you excited to get to talk with? We're going to have Nick on the show. We'll catch up with Dallas at a later time, but he representing the Kept Faith, one of several Padres blogs, podcasts, everything out there, Padres related in the Twitter sphere, the blogosphere, whatever you want to call it. Really looking forward to chatting some Padres baseball here with Nick. Nick, how you doing, man?
Hey, man, I'm doing great. That's the intro music that I like to hear.
Yeah, like I said, it means one of a couple things, but in some situations, you can kind of combine those.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a rough week with him and his beautiful face not being out there. We're struggling.
That was my first question. You guys okay over there? You guys holding up okay?
Yeah, I mean, it's always scary with the concussion thing or whatever concussion protocol that he's going through. I just realized today he's going to be out on the 7-day DL. So I've been really thrilled with him so far this year. I think he was always going to be a great defensive catcher, but he's actually showing that he has some power and he can hit a little. So that's exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to be have a very long career as a catcher in the MLB. I thought it was weird that, I saw today the Padres finally announced that he's going on the 7-day concussion disabled list. And I just thought that was weird. I mean, we all knew it was a concussion like days ago when you kept seeing on Twitter, oh, he's hazy, he's just not quite right, and just all these concussion-like symptoms. But no, it's not a concussion. It's like, hey, guys, that's a concussion. That is a concussion.
Yeah, it's scary because, you think about it's so common in the NFL, but when it happens in baseball, it sticks out more.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Talking with Nicholas McCann at Nicholas_McCann. I'll get that right. Third time's the charm on Twitter. But go ahead.
I mostly tweet from the Kept Faith for baseball stuff, so that's the big one.
Right, at the Kept Faith, Padres podcast, Padres blog, Padres everything on the social media world. Before we get into some Padres baseball, I wanted to ask you about the podcast. I've been following you guys for a little while here, listen to some podcasts now and again when I can. I'm subscribed, but how long have you guys been doing this, and kind of how did it all come together for you?
Well, we started doing the podcast, I guess, we did about 30 episodes in 2010, and we didn't, over 2010 and most of 11, and we got kicked off iTunes, and we just kind of didn't get back into it. We weren't really sure how, if people were really listening to it. We didn't have a real way to count the numbers or anything. And we just kind of got tired of the team for a couple of years. We didn't really want to talk about how negative things had gotten. So we came back 2 years ago after Queller made all those trades for Matt Kemp and that whole movement that they tried. We got really excited about the team and decided to bring podcast back. So, yeah, we've been doing, in this iteration, we're about up to our 100th episode, and we've done it basically over about 2 years. And we, last year, after, I guess it was about a year ago, we got hooked up with the Voice of San Diego, which everybody should check out and become a member of voiceofsandiego.org. They took an interest and kind of brought us in to let us use their really awesome studio that they built. So we're kind of like a podcast partnership with them. They let us use their studio, and they tweet us out on, or they kind of help promote us on all their platforms. So that's been really exciting. Check them out. We're technically on their podcast network. Yeah.
Love it.
Into a podcast network.
Yeah, I love it. Love the Voice of San Diego. A lot of good content, whether it's news, politics, sports, anything. I mean, they've got a really good finger on the pulse of San Diego, and I totally love it. I can totally relate to the whole, you mentioned, being on iTunes, you got kicked off. I don't know if I even want to know how you got kicked off, because it took me forever to get on.
We don't even know what we did. We generally don't really curse or anything or do anything that crazy, but I don't know, we just were kind of bummed on the team anyways, and we kind of lost steam.
Yeah.
And I think that, that was 2011, that the internet has matured so much as far as how people are putting stuff out. And
I was going to say, internet and maturity. You don't usually hear those two words together.
Yeah, it's a whole other animal now. But, back then we had like an RSS feed and like a blog spot, and that was kind of, we didn't really know who we were reaching. We found out a few people that actually have podcasts now were listening to it back then. That's the cool thing about having the podcast, is we've been able to really reach out to other shows like Intelligence and, the Padres Public shows, the Padres and Pints. We've been able to, it's kind of become this little scene where we all kind of do each other's shows and support each other. So that's been really fun. It's really, especially with Twitter and just posting blogs and doing a weekly podcast, has actually developed this little community that's been pretty fun. So.
Yeah, I've noticed that. Not that social media and podcasts and everything was really big in 2009, but that was when I moved down to San Diego, and so I've been here coming up 8-9 years or whatever, and I've totally adopted the city and the team and everything as my own. But I've really noticed that there's quite a pretty awesome online community around the San Diego Padres in particular. And I'm sure, other teams and other markets and other cities have something similar, but I'd put San Diego's up against anybody. It's very entertaining. It's informative. It's kind of a woe is us. We get to a lot of self-deprecating humor because that's just kind of all we have here in San Diego these days. But when things turn around, it'll be great. But I've totally noticed that it's kind of like a weird, goofy internet family between all the different blogs and all the different podcasts. I don't see any like animosity or any negativity between them. I think it's great.
Yeah, and what's been fun is that people from traditional media outlets like 1090 and more traditional outlets like 1090 and like the UT, and people have come on our show and kind of they don't judge it as being like necessarily below what they do. It's just, oh, you guys are talking about baseball? Like, well, come on. Like Darren Smith came on and he just was down to talk. So it's been fun. Actually, I've actually had a lot of enjoyment just reaching out to people, usually through DMs on Twitter, and just getting to meet people once a week. That's actually pretty rewarding.
Sure.
Anything.
Yeah. Love it. We're talking with Nick McCann from the Kept Faith, representing himself and Dallas McLaughlin, the other part of the Kept Faith. Let's talk a little baseball here before we get into the now and even the future of the next couple months of the season. I want to take a flashback to the first half of the year, because I took a little hiatus from the podcast, and then I took a break along with the All-Star break. Kind of just went away from sports completely. It's too bad Dallas isn't here, actually, because we had a stand-up comedian on the podcast, and it was one of the most popular ones we've had. I was like, look, it's the All-Star break. I'm taking a break from sports for a little bit and just get to laugh a little. So it's been, and last week's episode was just all dominated by McGregor and Mayweather and that circus. So I'm looking forward to talking baseball here. What were, if you had to give a grade for the first half, look, I mean, we knew what this season was. At least most of us had an idea of what this season was going to be, what this season was going to look like, what the goals for this year were. What stood out to you from the first half of the season, if you had to, put a letter grade on it?
Well, I mean, yeah, everybody knows going into the season what this was supposed to be and what it was. It looked like they were angling toward. But I mean, the guys that have been up here, I mean, they've played a lot better than I expected them to. I think it's actually pretty exciting that after hearing how bad they're going to be all spring training and basically through the winter or back through the winter. Like, they've actually stepped up and managed to be on pace to win maybe in the 70 wins. And I didn't really think that would be possible. It seemed like the organization was clear they were trying to improve their draft status and not spend a ton of money. So I really do applaud, like, Andy Green for actually keeping this together and keeping it semi-fun. They're winning series, and I thought it was going to be a complete disaster. But knowing that it would actually help in the long run, I don't know. I'm actually conflicted about that a lot. I think about it all the time, like, should I feel good when they win, or should it be fun when they lose? It just, you read all this stuff online, and people are freaking out when they're winning series, and yeah, I don't know what to think half the time. But I think if Andy Green can build a culture like this that have people overachieve, that can't be a negative. So.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you on how you feel when they win versus how you feel when they lose. I mean, just recently, the Giants come to town. The Giants are having a horrible season, and the Padres are able to take 2 out of 3. It was awesome. We got walk-off home runs, and that's great. But then I'm going, now we're 2 games farther behind the Giants in the draft order. And, is there going to be a difference between, number 4 and number 8? Maybe. I don't know. You can't predict these things, but it's just kind of one of those things where looking into the season, coming into the season, I was excited because I'm like, hey, when we lose, it's great. It's okay. It's part of the plan. We're actually kind of winning in that sense. And then when they do surprise you and win a few ball games, then you're like, hey, great. That was fun to watch. But it's definitely, I guess it just kind of depends on your perspective on things. Talk about Andy Green. I think I agree 100%. He's doing a hell of a job as the manager. It's essentially a AAA job. I mean, just with the amount of talent that's up here, all these guys were just in the minor leagues last year. I mean, there's just not a lot of big league experience yet on this team. And, the saying is minor league AAA manager is probably one of the toughest jobs in all of sports because guys going up, guys coming down, guys don't want to be there. It's tough. So it's almost like Andy's essentially dealing with that. And I think he's done a pretty good job. Yeah.
I mean, if it means them dropping maybe out of the top 10 in the draft and having a record that isn't a complete disaster, is the value of them being competitive for an entire season, having these players who have been told through the media, I don't know how much they pay attention to it, but the idea is that these are not the players that are going to be here forever. And if they can actually create a problem for the organization where they can't deny that these players are good, I think it's exciting just to watch young professionals who haven't proven themselves actually try to change the perception that people have for them. And I don't know, maybe that is more valuable than having, say, a top 3 pick. Drafting some high school pitcher who we might never see. Like, I don't know. I think a lot about, like, the Boston Celtics and Bradley Stevens and how they've rebuilt. I don't know how big you are into the NBA, but, they never really tanked. He just had a certain level of player, and he built a system through that. And slowly they've inched along throughout the playoffs. They've gotten to higher levels in the playoffs. I think there's value to having a coach have his system with all these young players and them buying into it. And I don't know, maybe they are improving. Maybe that's more valuable than just having just a top pick that may or may not work out. I don't know. They're not spending money either. That's the thing.
Right. Yeah, that's a big help compared to a couple years ago when you guys said you got back into the podcasting. They went all in and it didn't work. And that didn't even bother me when they went all in. I mean, I didn't want them to bring in Kemp from the beginning. I was never a fan of the guy. But I do applaud the mindset of, hey, we think we're close. Let's go all in on this and see what happens. And then I applaud them even more for being able to admit that it didn't work out and shipping those guys off a year later. And now, because it's like, hey, if we're going to lose, 80, 90 games, let's at least lose with guys that we're expecting to be here for when the team's supposed to be good. Let's at least see them. I'd much rather watch guys like Manny Margot and Hunter Renfroe and Austin Hedges. I'd rather watch them struggle, but playing hard, learning how to play at the big league level than guys like Matt Kemp jogging it out to first and Derek Norris, jogging it out. It doesn't do anything for me.
Yeah, and for this year, I don't know how people can really, at least so far, I don't know how they can be critical of the organization necessarily. If the attempt to tank doesn't work out, what else could the organization have done, really? They're putting out Jabari Blash and Hector Sanchez. These are players that nobody really has any expectation for, and they're winning series. It's I don't know. I guess if they get into the mid 70s and win, and they maybe they're in the 8 or 9, 10 draft pick range. I don't know what else the Padres could have done, especially with the trade deadline coming up. After that, if they don't fall apart, I think people are going to get upset that they're not tanking the right way. And you can't really tell young professionals to try to lose. You just have to put the players in position and assume that it'll all play out that way, right? I don't.
Yeah, no, it's kind of a lose-lose situation, really, depending on how you look at it. We're talking about how we knew what this season was going to be. And I really do think a lot of people, casual fans even, knew, even if they wrote it off as, it's going to be another crappy year for the Padres, everybody knew that it was not going to be, they probably weren't going to be contending for the playoffs this season. But what gets you excited for the second half as we move along? You said we got the trade deadline, we got September call-ups. I don't know if there's anybody on your radar that you're looking forward to seeing. But what gets you going? Because, the fact of the matter is they're not going to be contending come September. Right. So what gets you motivated to keep watching this other than I love baseball and I love the Padres?
Well, my number one motivation is I like to live tweet the games and get retweets and likes because I'm a broken person who needs validation on the internet. That's my problem.
Aren't we all?
That's why I'm watching. But no, the trade deadline is really fascinating because I really, if anything that Preller's done post the crazy December that he made all those trades, I really like how he's been able to move players. I'm surprised he actually was able to trade Matt Kemp last year, and actually I think he got something pretty good for it. And then, some of the other trades he's been able to do. I'm really looking forward to see what they get for Brad Hand. I want that, at least the trade deadline to be over, and then see, I was listening to Darren Smith earlier this week or yesterday, and AJ Cassavell was on, and he was saying that this is a very young team, and traditionally young teams fall apart at the end of once you get into August. So I'm interested to see who they bring up, but to see if they actually can tank the right way. I guess that's where we're at as Padres fans.
Rooting for them to learn how to lose the right way. Yeah.
I think there could be stakes. I think there could be entertainment just to see how that plays out, and if they can actually fall apart at the right time after they've maybe potentially got something at the trade deadline.
Sure. No, and you talk about the excitement of the team and of the young guys. I even remember saying this last year, and it was probably in the second half of the year after these guys were all coming up. And you kind of knew what you had. It's coming down to pitching, and the Padres just don't have the pitching. That's where, when you look at the process, we keep calling it the process. Well, a lot of the guys on the field and the guys in the lineup, they're here or almost here for the most part. It's the pitching. These guys are all 17-year-old kids that they just shipped in from all over the world, and they're learning how to not only play baseball professionally, but how to live in America. These are kids that were just pulled off the streets at 16 and given $3-4 million by AJ last year. So it's going to come down to the pitching, but I remember saying, look, this team's still going to be exciting for the most part. If you're a glass half full guy and you're looking towards the future, they're going to lose a lot of games 8-5, and you're always going to be one inning away from some pitcher, one of your pitchers just blowing the game up and it's over. But the team, the product on the field, I think is still capable of being pretty darn exciting.
Yeah, I I've been excited for Margot ever since probably since the Futures game. I mean, I've been excited, that catch he made. You know, him and Renfroe is, you know, if you can get that walk thing together, he's pretty exciting. He's one of the best athletes probably the Padres have ever had, I would say. And you know, it's interesting to follow the Padres now. You really, at least for a lot of people that I know, like you have to follow 4 different teams. You have to follow all the teams and the minors. And I actually have been, more than any other year so far, I think that's been the most fun thing to do, like reading Mad Friars and this new site, Padres Perspective. They're doing some really cool stuff, tracking, like, you know, San Antonio and Elsinore and all that. Like, I'm actually having fun looking at Twitter and, you know, all those websites and seeing reports about Mackenzie Gore pitching last night and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So I think there's enough baseball out there. I just want to see if Preller can, you know, show us some magic. It's really bizarre because, that whole thing where we first kind of got excited about him with all those trades, he was this wizard. Now he has to do it in a kind of a more stretched out way where he has to make these little trades. And I think that'll be exciting. I want to see. So.
Yeah, it'll be fun to watch the process start to unfold here as we move towards the end of the season. Talking with Nick McCann from The Kept Faith on Twitter at The Kept Faith, Padres podcast, Padres blog. A couple things and I'll let you get going. Will Myers, man, what is going on? Players have bad seasons. Players go through slumps, and there's the cliche, oh, that's baseball. But, man, these last few weeks in particular have just been ugly. I mean, we're coming off a day where he had a golden sombrero, 0 for 5, 4 strikeouts. Yeah. I think I saw, at least at the time that this podcast is being recorded on July 18th, he didn't have an RBI in all of July. And you can debate how much weight you want to put onto RBI, but, I mean, not one in the entire month of July. That's slow. That is a slow month, and it's just kind of been, he had a pretty good April, and it's just been a pretty rapid decline since. I mean, what are your guys' thoughts on Will Myers? I'm not necessarily jumping on they need to trade Will Myers. I think that's a little extreme, but I mean, the fact that it's even a conversation online, and again, you can say, well, it's on Twitter, so take it with a grain of salt, but the fact that the conversation is even being had of, does Will Myers need to go down to AAA and figure this out? I mean, they just signed this kind of 6-year deal. It's just, that's mind-blowing to me. Yeah, well, breaking news, he hit a solo home run tonight. I just saw that, so before you called, he hit a solo home run. Tonight. That's an RBI. But, yeah, no, I'm worried. I think the Will Myers story will always be connected to whatever Trey Turner does in his career, which is kind of terrifying because that kid looks like he's really good. He's hurt, so that's nice, I guess. Yeah, but no, it's scary because, you know, the Padres have decided that he was the guy that was going to sort of take this first wave of talent and be the bridge towards the upcoming wave. It seemed like they positioned him to develop himself into being sort of the senior for all these young players that are supposed to come through. And if it turns out he's not the guy, I don't know how tradable he is really, or what you would get for him. That's the scary thing. He seriously has some bad habits, and he's really frustrated. I tweeted something earlier this week that, like, I'm tired of seeing, like, sad photos of Will Myers on Twitter. Like, we're always asking, like, what's wrong with Will? Is Will going to figure it out? And it's not really something I don't really want that from my, you know, first baseman who the Padres have committed to for, you know, the rest of this decade. Right. So. You know, it's nothing against Will. Like, everybody, he as far as the qualities of the player and the athlete, I mean, he's got just about every quality that you'd want in the face of your franchise. I personally think, and it doesn't matter, I mean, my opinion, it certainly doesn't matter, and there's nothing you can do about it now, even if it did, but I just think that they might have jumped the gun a little bit, giving him the mega contract. I mean, it was one full season, basically. His entire career is one full season, and it was good, not great last year. I think it's highlighted by the fact that he was an all-star, and he was in the home run derby, but didn't really end 2016 very well, and then 2017 has pretty much been an entire slump. So I don't know. I hope that's not a trend where it's for this new regime. I mean, we can talk about Padres history all we want, but it's this regime that matters. It's this management group that matters, AJ Preller and company. And I just hope they aren't setting a precedent that, hey, have one good year, have a half decent year, and here's all the money that we have.
Yeah, and that's something that we talk about a lot on our podcast is, there's this, it's really tough to be a Padres fan because I feel like something like this happens, and he's had a bad first half, and, he's clearly gifted. I get frustrated that we have to worry about the anxiety of the ownership. Like, they make this long commitment for Will Myers, and it doesn't work out. Is that going to scare them in the future for putting serious money behind the player? I think that we have to worry about that as Padres fans, and I don't think that's necessarily fair. My wife is a Boston Red Sox fan, and I was in Boston last week during the whole DFA story with Pablo Sandoval.
Mm-hmm.
And they are facing like $48 million of dead money. It's the second highest amount in Major League history. And, listening to Boston Sports Talk Radio is amazing. But they hate him, But I was thinking the whole time, like, the Red Sox can weather this. They're not going to, stop spending money because of this. They can handle it. If that happened to the Padres, that would be 5 years of our lives.
Right.
It would be it could be. That's how I measure it.
It's crazy because that could have been the Padres. I mean, they offered him over $100 million when he was a free agent just a couple years ago.
Yeah, I'm actually in the process of going back and reading some of the pieces and seeing what was written back then, because that was totally a story. I remember that. Yeah. I can't believe anybody gave him 5 years. That just seems insane to me. But he had 3 great postseasons, and the Red Sox were they were playing to be in the postseason. So I guess they were attracted to it. It's just amazing though. Yeah, if Will Myers doesn't work out, are they going to be gun shy? And I know that's not necessarily all this regime's fault. It just, I've been a Padres fan for, my entire life. I'm 36. I'm always afraid of that. And I don't like it. I think it's unfair that I have to live like that following a team, but
when does the madness end?
Yeah. I have to worry about other people's money. And I see other fan bases that don't have to do that, really. If the Dodgers signed Will Myers to this contract, they probably would trade him and eat most of it, and people would forget, they wouldn't care. But here, this could be a real problem,
No, I totally agree. I hope it doesn't get to that point. I hope it all works out, but, it's totally premature to even talk about it, but you see online, everyone's saying that Will Myers is completely untradeable and he's untouchable. And for this year, yeah, maybe. But in general, I mean, I don't think so. I mean, I don't think anybody is untouchable except for, maybe the guys like Margot and Renfroe and Hedges, depending on how they pan out. But I wouldn't call anybody on this Padres team untouchable when it comes to trading for, again, we're looking 3 to 4 years. I mean, they say 2019. I'm thinking probably closer to 2021 is my guess by the time these young pitchers get up there. But even if it is 2019, I mean, it's 2 whole years. A lot changes in there in that amount of time.
Yeah, well, it's crazy because I always thought that he was going to be, the big problem with him was he was just going to be hurt for half a year or 9 months or something,
Right.
Because his wrist, and that just hasn't been the issue. He's just here, and he's not. not producing the way we thought he would. So.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
We're talking with Nick from the Kept Faith Padres podcast, Padres blog. Just one more thing before I let you go. I think I told you like 15 to 20 minutes. We're coming up 25 to 30 right now, but it's a good conversation. I'm having fun here.
Yeah.
My last thing, and again, I talked about it earlier, how kind of took a little hiatus from baseball, especially on the podcast here. So I didn't really get into it, but at least not on this podcast. I got into it in my day-to-day. I would love to get your thoughts on Andy Green, and in particular, the notion that Andy Green is soft. Now, if you're just trying to piece together what I'm talking about, listening to this podcast here, there was more than one or two. There's like a handful of incidents towards the end of this first half of the season. We had the slide from Rizzo in Chicago, and Andy Green saying, hey, don't throw at him the next night, like don't do it. Could go on and on and on about that. And then there was there's nothing Andy could do, but there's the overturned home run call against Detroit. And then there was him getting into it with Dave Roberts for the Dodgers and just getting punked, it looked like on television. And it started this whole conversation of, is Andy Green soft? Is he lost the clubhouse? I've certainly got my opinions on that, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Well, I don't. Yeah, he had a rough 2 weeks there, but that was an amazing conversation about softness and baseball. Baseball unwritten rules.
Right.
I don't think he's soft at all, really, because he has a really unique, insane job. He's dealing with 30 alpha dog maniacs who are making tons of money, and they're probably. Managing that many insane personalities is probably so complex that I could never even fathom how hard it is. I think one thing that I was worried about him rubbing people the wrong way is it seemed like he over-intellectualized the whole thing. Like he thought responding would be too easy, and the way he talked about it, maybe he tried to sound too smart about it. And that might have rubbed baseball traditionalists the wrong way. I don't really believe that he lost the clubhouse. Austin never said anything that sounded. He was the one who got, like with Rizzo, he's the one who got hit. But I don't know. It sounds like it could be something. If Andy Green doesn't work out, people will look back at this and say that, they were hearing things, unsourced, rumors that he lost the clubhouse at that moment.
Right.
I can see that happening.
Sources close to the situation.
Yeah, well, the bottom line is, ever since then, they've been playing really well. And
yeah, and I think you saying Hedges went on record and said, I totally believe that my manager has my back. I thought that would have ended the conversation right there, but then he gets into it with Doc Roberts, and apparently I was wrong. I would be lying if I said I didn't think it was a soft moment, at least in particular, Rizzo Gate, whatever you want to call that, the slide in Chicago, because, well, you can go on my website and see it. That night I did a podcast and it's titled "The Padres Are Soft," and that might have been off raw emotion, but I don't think Andy Green himself is soft. I don't think the players necessarily are soft. I think they just don't know better yet. They're still learning how to be big leaguers, but I do think it was a soft moment for Andy Green, and if you can't have a soft moment here or there, then I don't know what to say.
Yeah, I get it. It sounds like he would people reacted to it so strongly, so fast, that he didn't want to just he didn't want to react because everybody was pressuring him to. I don't know.
I do have a theory on it. My theory would be that Major League Baseball hates A.J. Preller, so ipso facto, they hate the Padres. And I don't think there's no doubt in my mind, and I don't know this, I've never heard this, but there's no doubt in my mind that Major League Baseball didn't call Andy Green. We already know that Joe Torre was on the phone with the Padres. There's no doubt in my mind that said, look, if you hit him, it's a $50,000 fine and probably a suspension. And he's thinking, screw that. Like, hey, Chacin, don't throw at him because I'm not rich. I'm not coughing up $50,000 for that. Yeah, that's a theory that I've heard a lot, and I could totally see that being the case. Like, if they're in hot water people, it seems like 10,000 years ago, but like just last year,
A.J. Preller finished the season suspended by the league.
The general manager of a baseball team was suspended for a month.
That's a big deal. It's a big deal, and to think that they might feel pressure to not make any waves this season with like beanball wars, I could see that. Maybe they weren't actually told that, but I could see them just trying to lay low. I wouldn't put it past it. Also, like, you know, if the idea is that they're going to be good in 2021, 2020, and Andy Green's still going to be here, he could also be thinking, like, these aren't my players. I don't have to necessarily protect these guys. I need the umpires to be on my side, you know, for the players that are going to be the core that actually we win with. I don't know. We're probably overthinking it. He probably just didn't want to react that fast. But,
right.
Yeah, I totally believe in that. That would make a lot of sense to me.
And that was the next day. I mean, they waited an entire day for all this to kind of fester and brew into something. I mean, my biggest issue was that the very next inning, the first leadoff hitter for the Cubs wasn't drilled by whoever came in relief. That was my, you know, I was a pitcher in high school, and if I just got a pitcher's mindset, I guess. But if I'm the relief pitcher, if I'm Brad Hand or Ryan Booked or whoever, and I saw that, and I saw it was a dirty play on my guy, it doesn't even have to be Rizzo. I think he did end up getting another at-bat, but I would have drilled the very first leadoff hitter of the 8th inning or whatever it was, and it's over, and then it's done. But when you let it sit there and brew for 24 hours, then it becomes a bigger deal than it really needed to be.
Yeah, and you know, the Roberts situation, I was actually at the game, so I kind of saw this afterwards. I didn't really know what was going on once at the plate. I didn't see the push, but I saw it afterwards. Was that an opportunity for Roberts, knowing that Andy Green was, again, on the ropes in public perception? Like, could he have just taken that as an opportunity to stick up for his guys and look like the tough guy in the division? It felt a little like that to me. I obviously didn't know what was said, but
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, maybe people heard about Andy Green telling Shafeen to not do that, and the baseball community decided, well, he doesn't want to play by these ancient, you know, these traditions that we have. He thinks he's too smart for it. Like, maybe that is a problem overall. I don't know. It's an ecosystem I'm looking on from the outside in on. So
right, that's all we're doing.
He wins a bunch of series after that, so it's like, what do we want from him? He's given this horrible roster, and I don't know how many managers could have like a better record with this group right now. Like, I mean, I don't know. I don't think the baseball manager. I don't think there's very many people that could do much better with what he's been given. So
I couldn't agree more. Nick, that's going to do it for me. That's all I got. I really enjoyed the conversation. I thought it was a lot of fun. It was good for me, at least, to get back into Padres baseball on the podcast. I know you probably been involved a lot more than I have over the last few weeks, but it was really good to connect with you from the Kept Faith, and kind of just, we talked about at the beginning of the interview, kind of that community, that online family. It's kind of good to bridge the Reindl Report and the Kept Faith together on this podcast. How can anybody listening right now, how can they get in touch with you and your content?
You can go to the biggest place we find people. We're basically on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at the Kept Faith. We post all our episodes on all those platforms, and they have links to the Google Play, iTunes, and Podomatic, all the different ways to get it. And we're going to have a new episode up on Thursday. I don't know when this is going up, but we'll have one this week. And you can check it out. Check out all the podcasts from the Voice of San Diego. They do if you're tired of sports, they do some really interesting stuff. The Voice of San Diego podcast, and also in this, we also talk. We were talking a lot of stadium talk and Chargers stuff when it was happening. So this season, we're basically planning on saying mean things about the Chargers all year. So we're not like fans anymore. We're going to be mean spirited and say horrible things.
You talk about you love to live tweet during the Padres games. You're going to be hate tweeting during the Chargers games then?
Yeah, we're gonna root for the team playing them, and just say mean things about Dean Spanos. That's basically, we're going to be petty and horrible. So that's our angle on it.
Nothing wrong with that. Nick, I really appreciate it, man. Have a good night.
All right, man. See ya.
All right, good stuff out of Nick McCann from the Kept Faith, and I mean that. I really enjoy this this tight-knit little online blogger sphere, Twitter sphere, this online community that the Padres have. I think it's second to none. So I want to thank Nick and Dallas, who is not there, but he is the other half of the Kept Faith. And again, you can follow the podcast and the blog on Twitter at the Kept Faith, and you can follow Nick at Nicholas _McCann if you would like, and Dallas, he is at Dallas_MC. They're both good follows, but the Kept Faith, like you said, that's where they do the majority of their tweeting and their online presence. So big thanks to them for joining me. It was good to get back into baseball. Before I get going, I told you I had a couple of stories for you at the end of the podcast, and the first one was why you're doing social media wrong and who you can learn from to fix that. So I have long been a fan of sports teams being good at Twitter. Like, it's not that hard to do to be good at Twitter, but we made fun of the Chargers for so long with how bad their Twitter team was and their social media team, especially around the move and the announcement and all of that. But I think there's nothing better than seeing sports teams when they clash head to head or anything like that, and just the jokes and the wisecracks that they make. I mean, what was the best part of we talk about the Chargers? It was easy to make fun of them. There was like 10 different teams, professional franchises that went on social media and they were clowning on the Chargers. And I thought that was the best part of the whole thing. These guys like, hey, we didn't change our logo, or hey, what do you guys think of our new logo and stuff like that, because it was just a joke when the Chargers came out with that crap. But I'm a big fan of sports teams and how they run their social media if they do it right. And the Portland Trailblazers at Trailblazers, they do it right. They are the most entertaining sports social media account that I follow. And I am not a fan of the Blazers. Matter of fact, growing up in Seattle, growing up a Sonics fan, kids, the Sonics, they used to be a basketball team way back in the day, back when we still had Blockbuster and all that fun stuff. The Sonics used to be a thing, but I grew up hating the Trailblazers, and so it's not like I'm a fan of them, but I am definitely a fan of their work, and I'm definitely a follower of them on Twitter. And I'll just give you a couple examples of just silly things that they've done. I mean, they've got this guy, what is his name? In the Summer League. I mean, this is Summer League, and this team is tweeting out like it's the regular season. Caleb Swanigan. John Brown will have to come in here and correct me on that, but they call him Biggie. You know, that's his nickname, and so they're tweeting out pictures of pictures of him throwing down a dunk, and then the caption is Big Biggie brand. Now, at this time the podcast is being recorded, the Trailblazers just played the Lakers in the Summer League Championship there in Vegas, so definitely a shot at Lonzo and Big Baller brand. So they got a lot of Notorious B.I.G. references when it comes to Caleb Swanigan, which I think is great. I love Biggie, so how could you not appreciate that? But then just the other day, let's pull up the date here, July 17th at 6:40 from the Thomas and Mack Center. Shoe update. Sounds like another dig at Lonzo. Shoe update. Jake Layman is wearing at Adidas tonight, just as he has every other game. And they're the most basic, just red and white Adidas. And they're obviously poking fun at Lonzo Ball and the Triple Bs, and then he was wearing Nikes, and then who knows what else he was wearing. And then the other one that got me excited was, so like I said, the Trailblazers, Lakers playing each other, and on the 17th at 8:30, I believe that would have meant that the game was over and the Los Angeles Lakers had won, and they have received the highly coveted NBA Summer League championship. And all it says is tempting from at Trailblazers, tempting. And then there's an image, and when you click the image, it says add muted word. And what that means is you can go on Twitter, and I've never actually done it, so I'm totally BSing here, but I would assume that you type in a word or a hashtag. I'm pulling it up as I speak. I'm kind of filibustering here to exactly tell you what it is. So you type in a word or a phrase or a username or a hashtag, and you will no longer see that on your feed. It won't come across you anymore. So the Trailblazers say tempting, and it's a picture of the @mutedword screen, and they typed in Lakers into the search engine. I just think that is great. I love when teams go back and forth on Twitter and they add funny images and GIFs, whatever it's called. I think it's great, and I think every professional sports team that has a social media department, they should follow the Trailblazers, and they can learn a thing or two from them. Last, to wrap it up, I said I'd get to a story about hashtag Daphne the dog, because that was a request on Twitter when I said, what else do you guys want to hear on the podcast? Talking baseball, I might get a little NFL. What else do you guys want to hear? And they want to hear Daphne the dog. So I'll give you some Daphne the dog. This has actually happened twice to me now. It happened over a year ago when I got my dog, and then it happened again just maybe about a week ago. Something happened with this dog, and it made me realize that I am not ready to have kids. Paul, what are you talking about? So, I'm in my mid-20s. I'll be 27 here in a month, September, whatever. I am not ready to have kids. I am not ready for what they bring and duties, pun intended, duties that come with children, young kids. So my dog, and this is gonna get a little weird. I'm letting you know now. Okay, you have your warning. If you need to get out now. There's no reason I saved this for the end of the podcast, but I'm not going to say I was fascinated by it, because I think that's a weird thing to say, but if you have a dog, you don't even have to have a dog to know this. We're going to get really real here. If you have a dog, you've probably noticed at some point that they have immaculate buttholes. There, I said it. Like dogs never have to wipe, right? I can't be, you're thinking I'm the weirdest guy ever right now if you're listening to this, but I can't be the only one that's thought, man, must be great. Dog never has to wipe. So based off of that, now that you got that image stuck in your mind, I let my dog out, and she runs out into the backyard doing her thing, and I'm getting ready to leave. So I pop out, and she has just squatted to do her business, number 2, if you will. And like I said, this is usually something for dogs where they take care of business, and when they're done, they're done. They don't need to wipe. They don't need to pull their pants up or anything like that, because they're dogs, guys. Dogs don't wear pants, but dogs also don't have to wipe. And I would say 99% of the time, that's how things go. But there was this one time, well, it's actually happened twice now, but this is what sparked this story in my head. I look over, I step outside, I look over at my dog, and she's hunched over, squatted down, doing her thing. And there's just a little nugget, a little thing, a little turd just hanging out of her butt. It won't fall down onto the grass. She's been struggling now I'm sitting there watching for like a good 10 to 15 seconds. I'm trying so hard not to just lose it. I'm laughing. It's the funniest thing I'd seen in a long time. And she's really struggling. And the look on my dog's face as she looks back over at me like, hey, what the hell is going on down there? Like, what do I do? She couldn't figure out why this poop wasn't falling out of her butt. And I'm thinking, this is the funniest thing. I didn't want to take a picture because I thought that'd be weird. I didn't have my phone on me, but the look on this dog's face she was so confused, and it just had me cracking up. And anyways, long and short of it is that she kind of made a bit of a mess, and it came down to me having to then go get a paper towel or toilet paper or something. I had to do some damage control. I had to clean, and it was disgusting. It was difficult because it's a dog, and they're like, "What the hell are you doing? Get away from me!" And yeah, I guess to sum it up, I wiped my dog's butt, and that was something that I was not expecting to do as I was getting ready to walk out the door and head over to work. So that definitely made it an interesting day. Something I hope never happens again. It's happened now twice in about just over a year, so I'm sure it probably will. But yeah, that experience made me go, oh boy, I'm not ready to wipe butts. That's not up my alley right now, at least in this stage of my life, and I hope it doesn't happen again for a while. So now that I have completely grossed you out and just completely turned you off from ever listening to this podcast again, that's going to do it for me. I really appreciate you listening in. Big thanks again to the Kept Faith, Nick and Dallas. Nick joined me. You can go online. You can go to thereindlreport.com and get just that interview, as well as this entire podcast will be uploaded. You can go on iTunes as well, whether it's on your computer or if you have an iPhone, you just pull up the podcast app, type in the Reindl Report, and you hit subscribe. And the way that works is when I post a podcast every week, it's like an hour later, you will get a notification on your phone that says new episode of the Reindl Report is available, and you can get it all right there. And I would really appreciate it if you left a comment. Always looking for feedback, even if it's something like, hey, jackass, don't ever talk about wiping your dog's butt again. Leave a comment. I love interacting, whether it's through comments or you can follow me on Twitter, and we can go back and forth there as well, at Paul Reindl SD. That's going to do it for me. Probably going to get into a little bit of football in the next podcast. Training camp right around the corner. How are we even going to watch and cover football next year? I don't know, but I'm excited to at least get there and find out. And college football, training camp starting up for most schools first week of August, so be really excited for that come around as well. So we got a lot to get to. But until then, I will talk to you next time. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Paul Reindl, and this was episode 47 of